Automation. You push a button, it runs a script, and you get your shiny output. But here's the twist. Agents aren't scripts. They watch you, plan their own steps, and act without checking in every 5 seconds. Automation is a vending machine. Agents are that intern who studies your quirks and starts finishing your sentences. In this session, you'll learn the real anatomy of an agent, the observe, plan, act loop, the 5 core components when not to build one, and why governance decides whether your system soars or crashes. Modern agents work by cycling through observation, planning, and action, an industry-standard loop designed for adaptation, not repetition. That's what actually separates genuine agents from relabeled automation and why that difference matters for your teams. So let's start where the confusion usually begins. You press a button and magic happens. Or does it? Automation's illusion. Automation's illusion rests on this. It often looks like intelligence, but it's really just a well-rehearsed magic trick. Behind the curtain is nothing more than a set of fixed instructions, triggered on command with no awareness and no choice in the matter. It doesn't weigh options, it doesn't recall last time, it only plays back a script. That reliability can feel alive, but it's still mechanical. Automation is good at one thing: absolute consistency. Think of it as the dutiful clerk who stamps 1,000 forms exactly the same way every single day. For repetitive, high-volume, rule-bound tasks, that's a blessing. It's fast, accurate, uncomplaining, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. But here's the limitation. Change the tiniest detail and the whole dance falls apart. Add a new line on the form or switch from black ink to blue and suddenly the clerk freezes. No negotiation, no improvisation, just a blank stare until someone rewrites the rules. This is why slapping the label agent on an automated script doesn't make it smarter. If automation is a vending machine, press C7, receive cola, then an agent is a shop assistant who notices stock is low, remembers you bought 2 yesterday, and suggests water instead. The distinction matters. Automation follows rules you gave it. An agent observes, plans, and acts with some autonomy. Agents have the capacity to carry memory across tasks, adjust to conditions, and make decisions without constant oversight. That's the line drawn by researchers and practitioners alike. One runs scripts, the other runs cycles of thought. Consider the GPS analogy. The old model simply draws a line from point A to point B. If a bridge is out, too bad. You're still told to drive across thin air. That's automation, the script painted on the map. Compare that with a modern system that reroutes you automatically when traffic snarls. That's agents in action, adjusting course in real time, weighing contingencies, and carrying you towards the goal despite obstacles. The difference is not cosmetic. It's functional. And yet marketing loves to blur this. We've all seen intelligent bots promoted as helpers, only to discover they recycle the same canned replies. The hype cycle turns repetition into disappointment. Managers expect a flexible co-pilot, but they're handed a rigid macro. The result isn't just irritation, it's broken trust. Once burned, teams hesitate to try again, even when genuine agentic systems finally arrive. It helps here to be clear. Automation isn't bad. In fact, sometimes it's preferable. If your process is unchanging, if the rules are simple, then a fixed script is cheaper, safer, and perfectly effective. Where automation breaks down is when context shifts, conditions evolve, or judgment is required. Delegating those scenarios to pure scripts is like expecting the office printer to anticipate which paper stock best fits a surprise client pitch. That's not what it was built for. Now, a brief joke works only if it anchors the point. Sure, if we stretch the definition far enough, your toaster could be called an agent. It takes bread, applies heat, pops on cue. But that's not agency, that's mechanics. The real danger is mislabeling every device or bot. It dilutes the meaning of agent, inflates expectations, and sets up inevitable disappointment. Governance depends on precision here. If you mistake automation for agency, you'll grant the system authority it cannot responsibly wield. So the takeaway is this: automation executes with speed and consistency, but it cannot plan, recall, or adapt. Agents do those things, and that difference is not wordplay, it's architectural. Conflating the two helps no one, and this is where the story turns. Because once you strip away the illusions and name automation for what it is, you're ready to see what agents actually run on, the inner rhythm that makes them adaptive instead of mechanical. That rhythm begins with a loop, a basic sequence that gives them the ability to notice, decide, and act like a junior teammate standing beside you. The Observe, Plan, Act engine. The Observe, Plan, Act engine is where the word agent actually earns its meaning. Strip away the hype, and what stays standing is this cycle. Continuous observation, deliberate planning, and safe execution. It's not optional garnish. It's the core motor that separates judgment from simple playback. Start with observation. The agent doesn't act blindly. It gathers signals from whatever channels you've granted: emails, logs, chat threads, sensor data, metrics streaming from dashboards. In practice, this means wiring the agent to the right data sources and giving it enough scope to take in context without drowning in noise. A good observer is not dramatic, it's careful, steady, and always watching. For business, this phase decides whether the agent ever has the raw material to act intelligently. If you cut it off from context, you've built nothing more than an overly complicated macro. Then comes planning. This is the mind at work. Based on the inputs, the agent weighs possible paths. If I take this action, does it move the goal closer? What risks appear? What alternatives exist? Technically, this step is often powered by large language models or decision engines that rank outcomes and settle on a path forward. Think of a strategist scanning a chessboard. Each option has trade-offs, but only one balances immediate progress with long-term position. For an organization, the implication is clear. Planning is where the agent decides whether it's an asset or a liability. Without reasoning power, it's just reacting, not choosing. Once a plan takes shape, acting brings words into the world. The agent now issues commands, calls APIs, sends updates, or triggers processes inside your existing systems. And unlike a fixed bot, it must handle mistakes, permissions denied, data missing, services timing out. Execution demands reliability and restraint. This is why secure integrations and careful error handling matter. Done wrong, a single misstep ripples across everything downstream. For business teams, action is where the trust line sits. If the agent fumbles here, people won't rely on it again. Notice how this loop isn't static. Each action changes the state of the system, which feeds back into what the agent observes next. If an attempt fails, that experience reshapes the next decision. If it succeeds, the agent strengthens its pattern recognition. Over time, the cycle isn't just repetition, it's accumulation, tiny adjustments that build toward better performance. Here, a single metaphor helps. Think of a pilot. They scan instruments, observe, they chart a path around weather, plan, they adjust controls, act, and then they immediately look back at the dials to verify. Quick, repeated, grounded in feedback. That's why the loop matters. It's not glamorous, it's survival. The practical edge is this. Automation simply executes, but agents loop. Observation supplies awareness, planning introduces judgment, action puts choices into play, while feedback keeps the cycle alive. Miss any part of this engine and what you've built is not an agent, it's a brittle toy labeled as one. So the real question becomes, how does this skeleton support life? If observe, plan, act is the frame, what pieces pump the blood and spark the movement? What parts make up the agent's body so this loop actually works? We'll unpack those 5 organs next. The 5 organs of the agent body. Every functioning agent depends on 5 core organs working together. Leave one out, and what you have isn't a reliable teammate. It's a brittle construct waiting to fail under messy real-world conditions. So let's break them down one by one in practical terms. Perception is the intake valve. It collects information from the environment, whether that's a document dropped in a folder, a sensor pinging from the field, or an API streaming updates. This isn't just about grabbing clean data, it's about handling raw, noisy signals and shaping them into something usable. Without perception, an agent is effectively sealed off from reality, acting blind while the world keeps shifting. Memory is what gives perception context. There are 2 distinct types here. Short-term memory holds the immediate thread, a conversation in progress, or the last few commands executed, while long-term memory stores structured knowledge bases or vector embeddings that can be recalled even months later. Together, they let the agent avoid repeating mistakes or losing the thread of interaction. Technically, this often means combining session memory for coherence and external stores for durable recall. Miss either layer, and the agent might recall nothing or get lost between tasks. Reasoning is the decision engine. It takes what's been perceived and remembered, then weighs options against desired goals. This can be powered by inference engines, optimization models, or large language models acting as planners. Consider it the ship's navigator, analyzing possible routes, spotting storms ahead, and recommending which way to steer. Reasoning introduces judgment, making the difference between raw reflex and strategy. No reasoning, no agency, just rote reaction. Learning is the feedback loop that prevents stagnation. It absorbs outcomes and adjusts behavior over time. If an attempted workflow sequence fails, a learning mechanism updates the playbook for next time. In practice, agents achieve this through retraining models or updating heuristics based on success and failure signals. This is what elevates an agent from a static tool to something adaptive, improving slowly but steadily with each encounter. Without learning, even clever systems eventually become obsolete, locked in time. Action is the hands and voice of the system. Plans only matter if they translate into execution. API calls, file writes, notifications, or commands. This component bridges decision to reality but carries risk. What if it triggers the wrong sequence or bypasses safeguards? And that's why robust action includes secure integrations, permission checks, and fail-safes. Done right, it's the difference between a controlled system, making targeted moves, and a toddler mashing buttons on the flight deck. Each of these organs is essential, but none can operate in isolation. They form a living circuit. Perception feeds memory, memory grounds reasoning, reasoning informs learning, and all 4 drive action. If one organ drops, the loop limps or collapses. That's why so many so-called agents falter when tested. They're missing vital anatomy. But remember, anatomy alone doesn't guarantee safe operation. Those organs need rules and oversight, otherwise they'll make confident mistakes. And that's where the next part of the conversation heads. What it really takes to keep a powerful system on course. Governance, the flight manual. Think of it less like strapping a rocket to your desk and more like issuing flight rules before takeoff. Agents are powerful, and once they start making their own calls, they need clear skies and visible boundaries. Without that structure, what looks like intelligence can drift into chaos faster than you can blink. When agents operate with independence, they behave like pilots of their own craft. They interpret data streams, weigh options, and trigger actions across your systems. That's exactly where things can go wrong. Bias in the incoming data tilts judgment. A lack of transparency leaves you staring at a black box. And decisions made out of you can collide with both compliance and ethics. Governance is the stabilizer. It doesn't slow the mission down. It ensures the course stays lawful and fair. There are 3 practical controls every organization needs to establish. First, secure data ingestion. This defines what information an agent is allowed to consume and how it's approved. Random feeds are a recipe for bias and leakage. Approved pipelines, on the other hand, guarantee that only sanctioned, clean inputs drive reasoning. Second, transparency and audit trails. Every decision should leave a footprint you can inspect, so regulators, managers, and stakeholders understand how outcomes were reached. Third, human oversight. People remain in the loop for decisions where the fallout is serious: hiring, healthcare, finance, safety. This isn't busy work. It's a guardrail that maintains trust when risk is high. Research shows that 2 adoption hurdles crop up again and again. Bias creeping in from skewed data and interpretability gaps that make outcomes hard to explain. That's why governance has to include both strong data curation and mechanisms that keep reasoning visible. Quality in means reliability out. If you skip that step, an agent can hum along at full speed while quietly learning the wrong lessons. Frameworks help translate these principles into action. Not glamorous, but structural. For example, tools already exist that act like air traffic control for your data. Microsoft Purview is one such option. It enforces what flows in, under which rules, and how it aligns with compliance obligations. It's not there to add intelligence, it's there to make sure the flight corridor itself is safe. Oversight also extends into ethics. Picture a hiring agent that optimizes by overfitting to biased history. It looks efficient in code, but ethically and legally it fails. Governance insists a human checks that routing decision before the damage ripples outward. That's not slowing down progress, it's preventing lawsuits, scandals, and reputational collapse. Regulation plays a similar role in defining the corridors. Data privacy rules, industry compliance, and territorial boundaries all act like no-fly zones. Violate those, and you collide not with a glitch, but with fines, enforcement, or loss of customer trust. Proper governance reframes these restrictions as stabilizers. They don't block innovation, they keep the craft from wandering into someone else's lane. Bias itself is worth its own mention. Think of it as a misaligned compass. Once skewed data sets the needle wrong, every correction the agent makes points further off course. Governance fights back by curating inputs, auditing models, and regularly adjusting calibration. Without this, agents can operate with astonishing precision toward the wrong target. Some leaders still treat governance like an afterthought, something bolted on after the build. That view misses the point. Governance is not a parachute, it's the onboard stability system. It smooths out wobbles, ensures instruments align, and allows the flight to continue even when turbulence hits. You don't cheer for it, but you rely on it every time you lift off. And here's the practical note for teams. Keep humans in the loop for high stakes or ambiguous calls. When choices affect money, safety, or fairness, give oversight the final word. For routine automation, let the agent cruise on its own. This simple triage builds confidence without grinding everything to a halt. So governance doesn't drain the thrill from autonomy, it converts raw potential into reliable performance. Once those rules are in place, the next consideration isn't whether agents can fly, but which type of aircraft suits the mission you have in mind. Choosing your hangar, Microsoft agents in the wild. Choosing where to park your agent is less about fancy features and more about aligning the craft with the mission. Microsoft has stocked its hangar with several platforms, each built for a different kind of pilot and a different flight plan. The key isn't memorizing names, it's knowing which cockpit fits your role, your problem's complexity, your compliance needs, and how tightly you need to bolt into the broader system. Think of 4 dials you adjust before choosing your hangar. First, user type. Are you an end user, a power user, or a developer? Second, mission complexity, simple workflows or enterprise-scale challenges. Third, data sensitivity. Will compliance and audit requirements follow you like a shadow? And fourth, integration needs. Does the agent just answer questions or must it wire itself into half your tech stack? Each Microsoft platform slots neatly into this grid. Start with SharePoint agents. They're tuned for end users who live inside documents and team workflows. The criteria they best fit: end user profile, low to medium mission complexity, and moderate integration needs mostly tied to internal content. They're not flashy, but they shine when you need a document-centric assistant to fetch, summarize, or organize records already sitting in SharePoint. Think of them as office clerks with decent memory, steady, useful, and obedient to the rules of your intranet. Copilot Studio raises the ceiling a little higher. Best mapped to end users who want low-code builds, it specializes in conversational helpers and lightweight process automation. Mission complexity here is modest: customer service chat, knowledge lookups, and guided workflows. Compliance demands are typically low, but integration remains accessible. It ties into business apps without requiring deep engineering. In short, Copilot Studio is the glider for business users, light, maneuverable, and forgivable if you clip a wing. Azure AI Foundry is a different beast. It belongs to power users and specialists tackling heavy missions, enterprise-grade intelligence systems where compliance is strict and integrations run deep. The criteria alignment is clear: advanced user type, high mission complexity, high data sensitivity, and extensive integration needs. Foundry is where you design custom AI engines, enforce governance controls, and scale across regulated systems. It's the carrier-class aircraft, big, complex, and meant for missions where precision and regulation matter just as much as speed. Now for the experimenters, Semantic Kernel and Autogen. These platforms suit developers and researchers who value flexibility and orchestration above turnkey simplicity. Criteria fit: developer user type, high mission complexity, variable compliance depending on deployment, and very high integration needs, since orchestration often means juggling multiple systems. Semantic Kernel extends existing applications with AI reasoning, while Autogen coordinates swarms of agents working together. Think of this as a squadron instead of a single pilot. Formation flying that lets one agent hand off to another mid-air. One industry example helps show why this mapping matters. A global consumer goods company documented how it consolidated and analyzed marketing data using agentic approaches to streamline decision-making. That deployment required both broad integrations and sophisticated planning capability, criteria that point firmly toward an enterprise-grade platform like Azure AI Foundry. The business case wasn't abstract, it delivered measurable ROI because the chosen Hangar matched the flight profile. And it's worth noting the skies aren't owned by one maker. Microsoft offers a strong fleet, but alternatives like Salesforce Agentforce remind us competition exists. Their presence highlights that no vendor monopoly dictates your path. The mission profile should, not the brand painted on the hull. The decision framework then is simple. Match who you are, how complex the job is, how sensitive the data feels, and how tight the integrations must be. From that, the right Hangar reveals itself. If you mismatch, you'll either over-engineer a trivial task or under-equip a mission that demands more. But beware of one final trap. If your problem is well-defined and repeatable, automation is still fine. Only pick an agent when you need memory planning or autonomy beyond a scripted workflow. And once you see that distinction clearly, the last piece of the journey comes into focus: redefining what agents truly are and why mistaking them for something simpler creates both risks and missed rewards. Conclusion. So here's the wrap. Agents are not automation. They think in loops, not scripts. They run on the Observe, Plan, Act engine powered by 5 critical components. And without governance, secure intake, oversight in the loop, and audit trails, you won't trust them to fly missions that matter. That's the difference between a clever macro and an actual teammate. One repeats, the other adapts. Now your turn. What's one process at your org that truly needs an agent instead of plain automation? Drop it in the comments. I'll read the sharpest examples. Shipped value? Nice. Subscribe so your brain gets automatic updates.